Hey guys, Brian delivers you the goods here. I'm returning to you this afternoon, this time for another album review. This is an album that came out on November 8th, but I didn't review it then because I didn't know if I wanted to or not. But this is for the Ab-Soul Soul Burger album that I got a chance to listen to for this 15-track record by Ab-Soul and let you know what I thought of this album overall, this rap album. So I'm going to discuss what I listened to for the 15 tracks, which is 54-minute runtime. Let you know my thoughts on this record overall. So let's dive into this album review. Now it starts with 9 Mile. I guess it's kind of like he's, I don't know if he's taking hits to Eminem or whatever. I don't know. Like throwing shade on Eminem because of the song, but I honestly don't know. I think he's making his own version, I think. But this track started off pretty hit cringy in a way. Not in a good way, but not in a terrible way. It just was kind of mid. The first 2 minutes of it was kind of mid, and then it got a little better towards the second half of the track. So this is a 4 out of 5 for me. I don't necessarily like this song, but I don't think it's one of my favorites. It's just decent. Payday was a decent one too. I didn't hate how Ab-Soul was rapping in this track some of the time, but it was kind of mumbling from time to time. But execution wise, I think this track worked for to some degree. So this is a 4 out of 5. Another decent track, but not anything I'd come back to a lot. All That featuring Jason Martin and Thirsty P was a good song in its own way. It at least had an interesting melody that made me keep going with the track, with like keep listening to the song. So I did dig this track for the rapping, and just some of the singing from time to time was alright. So 4.5 out of 5. And you get to California Dream featuring Vince Staples and Cam Carson. Um, Good track too. Not a terrible one for how it sounds. Vince Staples rapped pretty well in this track. Even Ab-Soul was rapping pretty good. And Cam Carson at the end of the track did pretty well with his rapping. Or it was one of those he was doing rapping or singing. But from what I listened to, I did enjoy it for what it was. So 4.5 out of 5. Bucko Jr. is a decent track. I'm not really a huge fan of this one. It's just some of the mixing has its hit or miss moments. And just how Ab-Soul's rapping it from time to time is hit or miss too. You can like it, and then there are times where you can dislike it with how it's executing. So 4 out of 5 for this one. I, Myself, and Me, featuring Doshi, was probably the weakest song. It's mediocre. It's not anything great because the melody and the pacing and just how it's structured with this track, the mixing is not well produced. It's not produced very well, and the melody sounds a bit off in this track. And it's trying to keep up with like a fast paced melody in a way with the rap beats, but it's not doing it for me. So this is a 3.75 out of 5. Don't hate the rapping in it, just don't like the melody too much. Then you have DND featuring Notorious NIQ. Good song for how it sounds. The rapping in it's pretty strong from Notorious NIQ and Ab-Soul in this, so I did dig this track for what it was going for, so this is a 4.5 out of 5. Don Julio 70 featuring Fresh is another good track in its own way. I did dig how this was sounding overall execution wise, and Fresh was sounding pretty good with his rapping along with Ab-Soul, so this track worked for the, I guess, harmonizing rapping in a way, and just mixing and production, it flowed pretty well. GoPro featuring Ty Dolla Sign And the last song got a 4.5 out of 5, just so you know. Um, GoPro featuring Ty Dolla $ign was kind of mumblish. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. So it's a 4 out of 5 for me. I think some of the way they're rapping in it, it's throwing me off a bit. But the mixing is not terrible. It's just hit or miss. Like I said, hit or miss. So 4 out of 5. Saudi Sweats is a good track for how it sounds. I think majority wise, Ab-Soul doing a solo track for this one did really well. It was a strong track, and his rapping was pretty good in this one. So 4.5 out of 5 for this one too. I did dig how the execution of the track was flowing, and the mixing and production was pretty strong. Squeeze first, second. Squeeze first two, I guess. I guess that's how you pronounce it. This is a good track for how it sounds. I like Ab-Soul's rapping in it, and just the way it's overall executing it did very well. And just the way it's sounding structurally with his rapping and just melody wise, it did pretty well. 4.5 out of 5. Crazier featuring JID. I wasn't sure if I was going to like this song, but I think it's decent. It's probably one of the least favorites. JID kind of sounded weird with his rapping in this one. I didn't necessarily like it, but I didn't hate it. So 4 out of 5 for this one. Ab-Soul sounded alright in this track, but JID kind of had a vocal tone that just didn't execute with his rapping. I wasn't crazy about it, but it was alright. Peace featuring Luke Fiasco and Punch is probably the best track on this record. I really enjoyed this over 5.5 minute song. It's like 5 minutes and 42 seconds, but flows very well and it executed very well. So 5 out of 5 for this track. The rapping in it's strong, the mixing and the production is very strong. Just the overall melody structure is pretty good. The Sky is Limitless featuring Blast and Asia Holiday is a good track in its own way. I do dig how this track is sounding from time to time. I have a few critiques, but nothing major. When Blast is rapping, it just is hit or miss. But overall, Asia Holiday sounded good in the chorus with her vocals, so 4.5 out of 5. And then we close it out with Righteous Man, which is a good track too, in its own way. I do dig how Ab-Soul is rapping in this track, and for 4.5 minutes, you're in for a pretty dope song to end the record, so 4.5 out of 5. So overall, production, mixing, and execution-wise, I think Ab-Soul's Soul Burger was actually a decent record. It's probably a step down from the last record, but I think from what I listened to, it's fairly decent. The only songs I had issues with were 9 Mile, Payday, I, Myself, and Me, featuring Doshi, was probably the weakest out of all of them. And then GoPro and Crazier. Everything else was fine to pretty strong. But overall, Bucko Jr. was another one I had an issue with too. I forgot to mention that. But overall, it's alright of a record, but it's not anything I would come back to too much. It's something you could hear once in a while and then just be like, it's forgettable. So for a score for me, I'm going to give Soul Burger by Ab-Soul a decent 7 out of 10. It's a decent record. It's not something I'm going to be coming back to too much. It's something I'll hear occasionally, but then I'll probably forget about it. And sorry about the dings, that's my messenger. But overall, 7 out of 10 for Ab-Soul Soul Burger. I was hoping this wouldn't have been as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's not a bad record, it's just decent at best. It's just a step down from the last record. Herbert, I think, was the last record, if I remember correctly, and that was a few years ago. But overall, I hope you enjoyed this album review for Ab-Soul Soul Burger. Thank you guys for watching this afternoon.